After my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he fought the battle for 2 years, and it was just a lot to do 24/7. I knew I needed help, and he was the one that suggested that I contact Notre Hospice.
My husband was diagnosed with melanoma right after Thanksgiving and tried many treatments, and I talked to my niece, and she had worked with hospice in North Carolina, and I asked her to explain it to me, and so she did, and I said, then that's what we need to do, because he needs to come home.
We're talking about my husband. He was 76 years old. He was diagnosed 13 years ago with dementia, frontal lobe dementia. And he did really well till about 6 months ago. And then we think he had a stroke. And after that, it was really a downhill slide.
Being a social worker in Notre Dame Hospice allows me to be there for families in a loving and devoted and faith-based way that I've never been able to do as a social worker.
They took the time to sit with my husband and I and answer all the questions. And we were so pleased that they came so fast. And we knew that the time would come when we would have to call them. And when we did, they did so that same day. And from then on, they were there. They lifted his spirits, lifted mine.
They were very compassionate, very caring. They prayed with me. They cried with me. They hugged me. They made me feel comfortable. They made me feel like I had made the right decision. It was a very difficult decision to make. Nobody wants their loved one to pass on, but I knew I was doing the right thing for him.
I think what appealed to me most about Notre Dame Hospice was how easy they made it for us. I talked to John's family on Sunday night, and I said, I plan to take him home to Bay St. Louis tomorrow and bring in hospice care. Do you agree? And luckily they did. And when my friend who works with the volunteers with Notre Dame said, let me make this easy for you. What time do you want to leave? What time do you want an ambulance to take John home? Let me handle it for you. She took all of that part off of me. I didn't have to think about it. She made the phone calls to have the hospital bed and all the equipment in our home when we got there. I didn't have to worry about it. It was one less thing. All I had to worry about was him and making sure he was comfortable.
Words cannot express what hospice can do for somebody. I had never been experienced to any of this before. And just to know that they came through to the very end and made his time at the very end so peaceful, it gave us that reassurance that everything was going to be okay, because I had a lot of questions that I didn't know where to go to. And they held our hand and they walked us through. And those precious moments at the very end were made even more important because they just took us through that journey and answered a lot and gave us peace.
It is an honor to work with families and being a part of their circle, being a part of the love that they experience and the devotion they have. Often families share memories with me, and it allows me to be a part of their family.
Hospice really is a lot of education. It's a lot of educating, a lot of supporting. Oftentimes, hospice is, I've always called it a choice of no choices. Nobody wakes up and says, I think I'll call hospice today. You know, when we're brought into people's lives, it's because there's something tragic that's going on.
When I talked to his oldest daughter who had flown in and his sister who had flown in, as well as his brother, and told them what I planned to do, and they all agreed, we made the phone calls probably about 9:30 the next morning, Monday morning. And they asked me what time I wanted to have an ambulance there because it was an hour drive. And sure enough, the ambulance was there at 5 o'clock, ready to bring him back home. He has 3 other daughters, and they were able to come over as well so that they could see him in a setting without tubes and nurses. And nothing against a hospital, they try, but it smells like a hospital. It doesn't smell like home. And he needed to be in a place where it was peaceful. And the hospice, the Notre Dame Hospice, gave me the ability to do that.
The first visit, when the nurse came in to take care of him, and after she completed bathing him and taking care of him, and he looked so good and so happy and so peaceful, he turned around and looked at me. He said, Mary Ellen, we made the right choice.
There was not one person that I dealt with that didn't make a difference. They were all there to hug me. They were all there to give me advice. They were all there to guide me through. And it made it so much easier.
I've already told many people how good the care was that John received. We got home at Monday night in the evening, and everything was there ready for him. And Tuesday morning, the deacon, the social worker, the nurse, the assistant, all came by to see him and get him settled. But before that, about 6 o'clock in the morning, I was standing there staring at him, you know, just seeing if he was going to wake up. And he woke up as clear as he could be, and he hadn't been awake in 2 days. And he just looked at me and he said, home. And I said, I promised you I'd bring you home. And I love you. And he said, I love you too.
When they reach the point where you know that they can't function normally again and it's time for them to meet Jesus, then, you know, that's the time to call hospice and make it peaceful to the end.
I have 6 children, and I have children, they ask me, Mom, you know, how can you do this kind of work? Isn't it sad? Isn't it just sad? I feel very privileged to be a part of a family and their loved ones, and how they treat each other with the love and devotion and the faith, and I can be a part of that. And I tell my children that that's why I went into social work.
We are a faith-based Catholic hospice. We do serve all denominations. We serve all faiths. We are a nonprofit agency, which means that we take the money that we are reimbursed for our care and we put it back into the community.
They kept my husband's dignity intact. Self-esteem, which was so important to us, to me, to know that he had his dignity through it all. They had so much love and so much compassion for him. And I just feel blessed that we had Notre Dame Hospice to be able to maintain that dignity for him.
I've told so many people, I can't say it often enough, they treated him so beautifully and so gently. The deacon came by to talk with his daughters and help counsel them. Everybody that I talked to, that I met with Notre Dame Hospice, was just, they were unbelievably kind and gentle. I will tell everybody I know how good they were and how they made me feel like I did indeed make the right decision for my husband, to bring him home and know that he'd be cared for.
There's such a peaceful, I think, understanding of the dying process. And again, it is the one thing that is going to happen to every one of us. And we don't understand it. We don't want to understand it. We don't talk about it. I used to teach a portion of a death and dying class to a group of 7th graders. And I would always start off by telling them, on the day that I was born, I was crying and everyone around me was smiling. And on the day that I died, I was smiling and everyone around me was crying.